Wait, so people have private property under communism? I thought communism was pretty much defined as people not having private property.
From what I understand in communist ideology, there's a distinction made between property that you use to make money and property that you use for personal use. And they accept the latter and reject the former.
I thought China has private property now, do they not?
Yeah, but they're not exactly a purely communist country.
Yeah, I think they're more I think they're more considered to be dictatorial and socialist.
So you can own property in China if you wanted to today. You could probably go down and buy some.
Yeah, I mean there are tons of capitalist elements to the Chinese economy now.
But how about eminent domain laws? Haven't they taken a hit in the United States in the last 7-8 years?
Well, actually, I believe the most recent important decision on the process upheld eminent domain laws, which a lot of us found rather enraging.
In other words, the property rights still remain somewhat compromised? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Mm.
The concern was, I believe the concern was that a private property was usurped by a city. This is my understanding of the facts. I haven't looked this up recently. Private property was usurped by a city and given to a private corporation as part of consideration for their renovation of an area of the city. So the concern was, is it really, is it appropriate to basically give property from one private individual to another private individual, as opposed to putting it in the public trust? And my understanding is the courts upheld that and said that was fine, because the purpose was still public welfare and the property was still fully remunerated. I probably don't agree with that decision, but I mean that's what the law said.
Well, interpreting what constitutes public welfare could be a slippery slope.
Absolutely, absolutely, and there certainly have been decisions where the court has said no, that what you're trying to do isn't really for the public welfare, and no, you can't take this land. But those are relatively rare.
So if I get elected mayor of my small town, I can, maybe confiscate some property and sell it to my brother-in-law.
Yeah, potentially. What I'll tell you though is, remember, these are constitutional discussions regarding federal law, so check your state law.
Mm.
In some states, eminent domain is limited to something that the state can do. In some cases, it has to go through some sort of state board or agency. And certainly many municipalities and cities have regulations against it.
I'd better stick to predatory litigation.
Yeah, predatory litigation is much better.
Yes.
Do you all remember that case where it was an eastern state out on the coast, I think. They wanted to build a mall, so they condemned all these houses, and they got it so they could. But then a whole bunch of states were kind of PO'd about it, and then they passed laws condemning that.
I don't remember what that was off the top of my head. If you have a name or maybe any more information, I might be able to look it up.
Yeah. I'll try to find it.
Now, one of the cases. Sorry. Okay, one of my cases in property class in law school was actually regarding a case where basically an environmental restriction on some sort of restriction involving wetlands had the constructive effect of stopping someone who bought a piece of property from being able to develop it. And I don't remember how the case came out, but I remember that the argument was that the government should have to compensate the private owner because the regulation put into place effectively lowered the value of the property and made it so they couldn't use the property for what they intended to. Whereas the government said, hey, you know, this isn't really a taking of property because you still own the property. We're just restricting what you can do with it. And so that was sort of the argument back and forth. I don't remember how it came out. But yeah, I mean, if you know you have a property, and you know you have a 1,000 acres of old forest that you intend to sustainably log, right? So you're gonna log 10% a year or whatever. You know, there's some rate of logging at which the trees are gonna keep growing back. You're gonna be, you know, it's not clear cutting, but it's, you know, you're able to take the trees and you spend the money on those acres, and then you know, the next year the state passes a law that says that trees that old can't be cut down. Then the question is that a taking? Because it's certainly the government interfering with your ability to use your property, but they're not actually taking your property away. They're just stopping you from doing something with it. So
in Iowa, if the branches come across the property line, the owner on the other property has the right to cut them down.
Yeah, that's true in a lot of places because after all, it is your side of the property.
Yeah, for safety issues too. I'm sure, you know, safety.
Your land. I don't know what the rule is where I am. My guess is it's probably not a state law. It's probably municipal regulations come up.
Yeah. Just like my dad has to keep the trees trimmed for the road so trucks can get by right away without getting damaged.
Yeah, well, and you know, the bottom line is you can get away from a whole lot of that by living outside of the city and get into the county or township instead, which is what my grandfather did. You know, he bought a farmhouse on a piece of land out away from the city, and so he can do things like shooting varmints on his property and starting bonfires and stuff that we in the city are not allowed to do. Of course, the problem is that the city's grown and has since annexed his land, but when they did so, there was a whole list of city codes and regulations that he was exempt from because basically, well, he's my grandfather, so I'll go ahead and say it. They grandfathered him in.
Did they horseshoe around his property?
Say what?
In my district, towns have a habit of horseshoeing around land.
Yeah. Yep.
And creating islands within their town that are considered county.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't done that yet. The city I'm in here grows more organically than that. So they'll say, okay, now we're going to consider this, you know, the rest of the property on this street and the street next to it as all being city property. Okay, well, because here's the thing: there's a bunch of rights that you have when you're part of the city, like the right to sewer and water access from the city and other stuff like that. So when they make the decision to do that, they have to spend some money to update the infrastructure. You know, they have to run sewer lines out there, they have to run gas lines out, stuff. So they usually do that, you know, pretty linearly.
There's a house with a couple horses in town, actually, because the city kept growing, but they kept the horses in the land.
Yep.
So there's horses in town, actually.
Yeah. So the bad side of the city regulations is I can't shoot varmints on my property. It's against the law. But the good side is the city provides free varmint control. So I just have to call out a professional to come deal with the varmint.
But your grandfather could shoot like bald eagles and have a bald eagle barbecue?
No, that would violate federal law. but my grandfather can and does shoot gophers, birds, deer, coyotes, that sort of thing on his land.
Must have a nice acreage.
Yeah, it does. Quite a few. A lot of it wooded. Actually, he has several acres of old or of about 35-year-old walnut orchard.
Wow.
Really walnut forest now, because it's
Sweet.
just kind of been allowed to grow itself.
That's pretty rare, I hear.
Yeah, well, they planted the walnuts a bit before he bought the property, and he just let it grow. So in another probably 10 years, it'll probably yield a few thousand. But for now, that's one area where the animals like to go because there's lots of walnuts fall every year.
Yeah,
So,
squirrels and such.
good eating.
Yeah. Oh,
Squirrel
yeah.
and deer. Yep.
Well, I think one of my main issues that I have with property rights is when it has the potential to interfere with other human rights. For example, what would you say about a situation where, let's say, there's this village in some third world country in Africa or something. I know that's not a country, but let's say there's some village in Africa. They have a lake or something that they use as their primary water source, but now Aquafina or whoever wants to buy that lake, and they can buy it, and the village really has no conception of ownership of the lake, so they don't have the power to buy it from Aquafina. And the Aquafina water is going to the United States and Europe and stuff. It's not going to them. And now they've been banned from their water source because Aquafina now owns that water source. So,
yeah, So you can see a couple of the issues, right? First of all, the big issue that propped up to begin with, as you said, is, well, these guys don't have any concept that they need to own it, right? Mm-hmm. So part of the problem is there not being a strong property right to begin with. In most places in many countries now, not all countries in Africa, but in many places, what the government would say, certainly what various non-government groups that are over there would say, is that village owns that lake. And if you want to do anything with that lake, you have to negotiate with that village. They own it, right? So that's the first issue there. Is the real concern is basically, it's not really a concern with private property at all. It's the fact that someone is taking it from someone else who needs it, right? That's really the issue.
Yeah.
So then the second, if we're talking about, there are some, we can reconfigure the issue to be in different ways, right? So we could have them along that the lake is fed by a river, and then upstream from that river, a company wants to come in and divert a lot of the water from that river. This, by the way, is not an unknown issue. We're getting into what's known as water rights, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially, we have, at least in the developed world, certainly in the state of Ohio and in most other states whose laws I've looked at on the subject. See, at this point, I think I've reviewed Texas, Oregon, and a few others. But there are rules regarding water rights. So just because you happen to have land that has water running through it does not give you the right to divert or take all of that water. There are limits to what you can do with water that has naturally gone to other people downstream from you. And the same could be true in this case. So the point is, property rights, particularly water rights, can deal with the issue of, well, what about somebody downstream that depends on that water? Well, the law in most places is, you have a natural source of water, it is against the law to do anything that would deprive anyone who has a right along that water from access to that water.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm awake, Tommy. What's up?
Say what?
Oh, I was.
Yeah, Tommy was posting in comments that I should be awake. Did you add something from Tommy?
No, I just wanted to incite you to speak. Your voice is edifying. Of course, Adams is fantastic. I have no complaints with Adams. Fascinating, but you know, my appetite for wondrous human beings and what they have to say is insatisfiable. So,
insatiable.
Thank you.
So flattered.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been told by absolute atheists today that my voice is sexy. So I'm kind of used to it.
It's very, very much so.
If I was a girl, I might be. Well, never mind.
Well, I just have nothing really to add. I'm playing a game actually here.
Adam.
First-person shooter. I'm mostly concentrating on the fighting here.
Adam, my attorney upbraided me harshly for the employment of the word irregardless. Said never use it in his presence again. He said it viciously. I think he believes that irregardless is not an official Webster's word, and I think he feared his credibility would suffer if he accidentally or compulsively used it at a trial somewhere. And so, but anyway, I appreciate that's insatiable.
Insatiable.
Insatiable. Thank you.
I'll write it out in the sidebar too.
You are a gracious man. Yes, thank you. You know, my IQ is only 105, so I struggle for all the credibility I can, you know, grasp and cling to.
No,
so, thank you.
Typically speaking, IQ measurements are bunk anyway. You know.
I thought that was a little optimistic, but you know.
No, I wasn't. No, that wasn't my point.
Yeah,
that wasn't my point. My point is that IQ tests are bunk. They really tend to reflect more what you know than what you can learn. And that's the problem with them. I mean, the purpose of intelligence is supposed to be capacity for learning and understanding, but what IQ actually typically measures is, you know, what you know now. It's the same problem with trying to measure someone's ability to run by how fast they currently run the 100-meter dash, right? So how fast they currently run it is probably going to mostly depend on what training they've actively been doing up to that point, not what training they could potentially do. So same problem with IQ tests. You could read some particular books and do some particular training and go back and take the same test or the equivalent test again a month later and get a score 10 points, 20 points higher. So what does that tell you about how good the test is?
Yeah, no, sorry. They also tend to be specific to the culture. I took once a test on an American site, right, and they asked me questions that I'm not supposed to even know. I mean, you know, like the presidents, you know, list the presidents or something. Why should I fucking know that? I'm a European. I don't care about your presidents.
Agreed. Yeah, which is that. It's exactly that. I mean, that is a specific example of exactly the point I was making. Now, most of the tests I've taken aren't that bad, but they will do things like test for vocabulary, like which of these words is you know, a synonym for this other word. And well, I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, there will certainly be a correlation, right? High IQ people are going to tend to read more and know more words, but an uneducated person with a high IQ isn't going to know the answer to that question, which tells you that again, it's not really IQ they're testing; it's education.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
I'd agree.
How about the LSAT? Is that do you feel like that's a reasonable assessment tool?
Well, I'll point out, like almost any other test, you can train for it. So, like almost any other test, pretty much any test out there, you can do exercises, you can take practice tests, and your score will get better. So obviously, it's got to be testing something more than latent ability. What I'll say is good about the LSAT, though, is that it is testing the sort of skills that it is good to have going into law school. It's testing reading comprehension at a very high level, and it's testing sort of basic logic problem-solving type skills. With the logic puzzle part of the test. Again, those are trainable skills, but I mean, you know, I wouldn't say the LSAT is a horrible test. I would say I would say it probably is a good way to control for people that have had the sort of training you want law school students to have. Put it that way.
Is there any truth to the rumor I heard that around 1900, 1904, that the chief or leader or king of the patent office, United States Patent Office, spoke to Congress and wanted to close the patent office because everything had been invented that could be invented? Have you ever heard?
There was a famous quote about everything having already been invented, but I don't know
If it was the leader of the patent office or not.
Yeah, I'd not heard that. It's possible. Oh, here we go. Charles Holland Duell. Yeah. So let's see. In that role, he is famous. Here we go. Here's the relevant link on Wiki that deals with this urban legend. So here's what it says. In that role, he is famous for purportedly saying everything that can be invented has been invented. However, this has been debunked as apocryphal. In fact, Duell said in 1902, quote unquote, "In my opinion, all previous advances in the various lines of invention will appear totally insignificant when compared with those which the present century will witness. I almost wish that I might live my life over again to see the wonders which are at the threshold." Yeah. Apparently, the most likely this quote is a misattribution of a quote from the mid 1800s, 1843. So the patent commissioner Henry Ellsworth in 1843 stated, "The advancement of the arts from year to year taxes our credulity and seems to presage the arrival of that period when human improvement must end." Okay. However, that statement was rhetorical, and right after saying that, he went on to talk about some of the yet new areas of improvement that were happening. So it doesn't appear that a patent commissioner has ever really had that attitude that inventions were coming to an end.
I am relieved to hear that.
Yep. I will say though, and this is a concern I have had in the past. All patents in the patent office are classified. They're classified into some very specific area of invention. So, if you come up with a new kind of windshield wiper for the front of the automobile, it will be classified as accessory, water accessory, automobile water accessory, front of automobile. Right? I mean, the categories get very specific. There probably is at least one category specifically for windshield wipers. There may even be separate categories for like automated and manual windshield wipers or something like that. I'm just using this as an example. And that always bothers me, just because when you have a truly new innovation, a truly new invention, it would seem like it would likely defy classification. But obviously what they do is they just invent new classifications when they need them. All right, I should head off for now. Talk to everybody later.
Thank you, Adam. See you.
Have a good day, Adam.
Take care, Adam. Take care.
Adam rocks. Adam has spoken. Let it be written, let it be done.
Indeed.
Art has the flying spaghetti, God manifested himself lately in the last 24 hours in your reality?
I don't know. Depends on what you mean by God and manifestation of him.
Yeah.
That's the question, though.
Yeah. Have you had a boner in the just kidding, sorry.
But that is what you mean by...
No, I was just, it's a scraping the bottom of the barrel, you know? Theo humor. Theo humor.
Are you manifested something?
Well, I'll have to wait for my coffee first, then I will tell you.
Yeah, wake it up first. Slap it around a bit.
Look, Glenn is task-oriented. I bet he's envisioned a goal. He's going somewhere.
I'm getting to get out.
He's putting on his boots. Yes.
Baldessar. Why does that name ring a bell?
Have you heard Balthazar speak?
No, but I recall the name.
You have a treat. Perhaps you have a treat coming.
Speak, O great Baldessar.
Yes, please. Please, the wondrous one. Please. He's not subject to flatter. He's not subject to flattery easily. Not easily flattered. That icon, the icon picture of Balthazar is actually not current. He's grown a lot since that was taken.
I imagine as much, being that speech and probably bipedal movement now is evident.
His English vocabulary is richer than mine, although I think he was born in some mystic land of trolls and somewhere out there. I forget what it's called. Telemark, I think.
It's okay. I've been called a troll.
Yo, are you adept at the art of trolling?
No, but I think it was the last hangout that Veckel considered me a troll.
Well, sometimes one can be considered a troll for breathing or having an opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Veckel seems to identify things pretty easily.
Did you not concede to his undeniably perfect rationale, or?
Sorry, did I not concede to his what rationale?
I'm trying to include the word pedantic in this question, but anyway, did you not agree with his rationale, or
of what? Oh, he dropped. St. Tommy. Okay.